Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to Tosh Mahal today. I'm Tosh and my better half Hall couldn't make it today. So I'm just gonna kind of share with you a part of our journey of reviving this 1922 bungalow. And today the main thing that I'm trying to focus on is this lovely concrete slab right behind me. A lot of these homes were built with, I guess there was a fireplace here because there's a chimney on the other side, and this lovely eyesore has just been hanging out in our dining room enjoying our dinners with us each night. So I'm trying to figure out a way to make it less of an eyesore. So my brilliant idea that I had to try to attempt to hide it is to possibly try to faux finish it and make it blend in with the original hardwoods that we have in here already. So the first step that I'm gonna do is sand it. I'm gonna try it with some 80 grit sandpaper and see how that works, because I have been mopping it and getting a lot of oils on it. This is Ed Earl, he's gonna help. He loves the sander, don't you baby? Loves the sander. So after I sand it, I got some Rust-Oleum concrete etch to really clean it so my faux finish can adhere to it as best as possible, which hopefully it works out. So we're gonna find out here in the next day or so. The concrete etch that I got is Rust-Oleum. It's just anhydrous citric acid, which is a pretty common household item, believe it or not. A lot of people use it to make bath bombs. Some people use it to clean or as like a water softener. And it sounds really scary when you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna put this concrete etch in my home with my pets and my babies. But citric acid is basically the exact same thing that makes our Sun Drop and our Mountain Dew taste like lemon lime. So it's actually not quite as scary. They just extract it from fruit and then dry it out until it reaches a crystal form so it can be more usable. And it kind of concentrates the acid. It's just a weak acid, and it just kind of busts through whatever nonsense is down here that will keep the paint from sticking. So I'm gonna do that. And I have bought this big old 2-gallon box worth off of Amazon for like 10 bucks. Most grocery stores do carry this in the cannon aisle. You might have some under your cabinet, or you can just order this concrete etch off of Amazon or get it from Lowe's or Home Depot or your local hardware store like I did. But I did some really fancy 7th grade algebra to figure out exactly how much I need. I'm estimating that this is probably like way less than 8 square feet. So according to my calculations, that's about 1 tablespoon of this added to 1 cup of water, and I'm just going to dissolve that in a plastic Solo cup. Make sure if you decide to use this etch that you do use a plastic container. A lot of people recommend using a watering can that's plastic because it will react with metal because it is a weak acid. So I'm going to get to sanding, and I'll see y'all back in a few minutes. Alright, so I just got finished sanding with my 80 grit sandpaper and my little battery operated cordless Ryobi palm sander, which I love. It's one of my favorite tools that I own. So I feel pretty good about the results from sanding it. It looks like it got up a bunch of the boogers. There were some dark spots around the edges where you could kind of tell that the oil had soaked in from my wood cleaning products, and I was able to get those almost completely up. So the next thing that I did was vacuum instead of sweep, because I just worked so hard to get all those boogers out of the concrete and out of the cracks around the junction where the wood butts up with the concrete. So I didn't want all of that stuff to settle back down into the porous surface of the concrete that I just sanded or in the cracks of the wood. So I vacuumed it just like a regular vacuum, and then I went over it with a brush attachment to make sure I got up all of the debris, because I don't want anything making it more likely for this faux finish to come up, especially since it is on the floor. Even though we don't walk back here that often, I just want it to last as long as possible if it ends up actually looking good. So after I vacuumed, I mixed up my citric acid. I put 1 tablespoon into 1 cup of warm water, just plain old sink water, and put that in a Solo cup and stirred it to dissolve. And then I wet the whole entire surface. This is a very small surface that I'm working on, so I just went ahead and wet the whole entire surface with plain old warm sink water. And I put out some really old towels around the edges, just so I can kind of minimize all of the excess water that's gonna inevitably get on the floor, because this slab is at a slant, unfortunately, so everything just kind of runs right back onto the floor. So that's what the old towels are for. I don't think it's gonna mess up the floor, but this is a 100-year-old floor and it's seen a lot and it still looks pretty good. And I'm really happy with how it looks and all the character and imperfections on it. If you have a brand new floor that you're doing this on, you might want to be a lot more careful than I'm being. Maybe mask it off or put down a drop cloth or something like that to really keep the water from making it bubble or raise or anything like that. But I have full faith in this floor, and I'm just gonna kind of hope for the best. And if somehow I mess it up, I've got all of these wonderful stains behind me, so I can kind of fix it. Hopefully it doesn't come down to that. So after I wet the floor, I took my mix and I actually put it in this handy dandy little spray bottle, because I didn't buy a watering can, but I think that would be a really good idea, especially if you're working on a larger surface. A watering can is going to be a lot easier. But since I only have like a 1 foot by 4 foot section, I just put my mixture in here once it was dissolved, and I just sprayed it on top of the wet concrete area. After that, the directions say to let it sit for 1 to 2 minutes, and it's probably been about 5 minutes now. So I'm just going to scrub it with this really high-end scrub brush that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to scrub it until it doesn't bubble any longer, and then I'm going to rinse it with some more clear, clean sink water, and then let it dry. So I'll probably let it dry a couple hours, maybe overnight if need be, before I put my first base coat of paint. So I'm gonna get to scrubbing, and I'll see y'all when I'm ready to paint. Alright, so I've let the paint dry overnight, and I think it's ready to be masked off so I can redo the stripes and make the faux wood planks. So I'm going to take my painter's tape and I'm going to line it up with the planks and try to get them even with the planks, and then I'm going to go over them with some Mod Podge to make sure my lines are a little bit cleaner. It's kind of like a little stenciling trick. And then I'm going to dab over it with some really dark brown acrylic paint that I just grabbed from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to finish over this with a gel polyurethane and probably some sort of clear top coat, so I'm not really worried about the resilience of the acrylic paint at this point. And at this point, we really don't even know if this faux finish is going to look good, so I'm just kind of going with it. So we'll see. Alright, so here is the faux finish part of this process. I ordered a wood grain rocker off of Amazon. Apparently they sell them at home improvement stores as well, but I just like to get stuff delivered, so I got it off Amazon. And it's kind of a learning curve, I guess, trying to figure out how to get this to actually look like wood grain. And also I think it was designed for really smooth surfaces, so I guess I'm pleased with the result that I'm getting so far. It definitely looks more like wood than concrete does. So I'm just gonna kind of show y'all my technique that I figured out on this rough concrete, and we'll hope for the best. So I'm putting a really, really, really light brushing of this varnish onto the surface. Just a tiny little bit. Don't want it too thick because this little faux finisher doesn't work like a paintbrush. It's actually working by removing the varnish. So you kind of start on one end, get all the way up to the edge, and press down, pull a little bit, rock a little bit, pull a little bit, rock a little bit, pull a little bit, rock a little bit, pull a little bit. And then one end has these little teeth on it, so if there's any thick spots or spots that didn't get enough wood grain, you can just kind of pull through while it's still wet with the teeth, and it adds some more little lines to it. So it's interesting. It's really a lot of just trial and error. And this spot up here, I don't like how thick it is, so I'm just gonna kind of rocker it a little bit more. So as you see, not a super precise process here. I'm also not painting really in between the lines. I'm kind of just randomly brushing this stuff on. And I'm also switching the direction of my rocker each time to kind of vary the pattern, because I don't want it to look like wood paneling or wallpaper or just some generic design. So if I wanted this to look like generic store-bought wood, I would have just gone down to the Dollar General and got some stick-on linoleum and just slapped it down here and called it a day, because this is a lot of work. So you'll notice when I brush, I'm kind of like brushing not all the way to the edges, because I don't want the edges to be way darker. And I kind of want them to look kind of worn around the edges like the rest of my original floor does. So I want my edges to be lighter. So I just finished up my faux finish and I'm pretty happy with it. Once I put my light brown glaze over it, I think it's gonna blend in with my original floor pretty beautifully. So I'm gonna let this dry for a good bit. Probably hit it with a hairdryer and put my oscillating fan on it. And once it's dry, I'll put my light brown glaze on it and then seal it, and I think it's gonna be all done. So I poured a little bit of this summer oak into a paper plate, and I'm just sopping it up with a brush, and I'm gonna put this on a lot thicker than I did with the wood grain, because I want this to be really thick and glazy. And it looks so pretty, and I kind of want to go over my whole entire floor with this because it's just so pretty. Now I also got a clear polyurethane glaze to go over top of it. I don't know if y'all can tell, but I get really excited about when my DIY projects actually work out. I'm dabbing it in the edges real good, just to make sure that original tan paint is not sneaking out on me. I don't want it to give away my secret. Okay, so also now that I've done a small section, I've got my handy dandy Dollar Tree dust brush again, and I'm just gonna run it through this wet varnish to try to get a little bit more wood grain. Ew, so good. Oh my god, y'all. Good morning. So this gorgeous stain has dried perfectly, and it actually has a really nice gloss to it, but I'm still going to put the polyurethane over top of it to seal it, just to kind of help it last a little bit longer since it is going to be on the floor. So this is called, this is actually spar urethane, and it's for outdoor use. So I figured that would be okay for the floor, just in case it ever does become a high traffic area. Maybe it'll help it last a little bit longer. And I'm using a little mini roller that I've been using to paint our doors. It's for smooth to semi-smooth surfaces, just to kind of help it hopefully match the sheen of the floor. Not right at this moment, but I want it to match the floor like right after I mop it when it's really, really shiny. I always use like Murphy oil or something really high gloss to highlight the character of the floors. But since this is not real wood, I'm not going to be oiling it, so it needs to be super shiny all the time. And I'm just rolling it on like normal. I let this stain set overnight. It was recoatable in 1 hour, so it's definitely good to go. And this as well should dry in 1 hour. Yesterday when I first used this stain, I was so excited about how pretty it is. I wanted to do the whole entire floor. Our office has this rough, well, had this rough patch in the middle of the wood. They're honestly the worst floors in the whole entire house. Good morning, baby. Don't eat this. No, it's smelly. You're not gonna like that. I told you. So anyways, they're the worst floors in the house, and there were these weird rust patches that almost had like a greenish tint. And the stain that I had originally purchased yesterday was really, really red. So basic color wheel, red is the opposite of green. So I thought, I wonder what would happen if I put this red stain over these greenish, scratchy patches. Because I mean, honestly, what could go wrong? The floors can't get any worse than they are. So I did that, and I let it set overnight, and this morning when I first woke up, I was walking to the kitchen to get my caffeine, and I was like, oh my gosh, these floors are beautiful. So I'm really, really impressed with how easy the stain has been to use. I kind of feel like I can just like, Ed Earl, please get out of that, honey. You're going to track it all over the house. Fun fact about Ed Earl, when we were painting the office, we were painting an eggshell gray, and I left my lid to the gallon of paint upside down on top of our drop cloth, and Ed Earl just thought it would be the perfect place to take a nap, so he stretched his long 15-pound body across it, and his whole entire belly got covered in this eggshell latex paint. and he had a vet appointment the next day, and we were like, oh my gosh, they're gonna think we're like abusing this cat. We were so upset. We're like, what are we gonna do? So I was trying to like cut it out with scissors, and he was just not having it. So his belly is currently bald because he was just like pulling his hair out, and we took him to the vet the next day, and she just kind of giggled, and she's like, well, I think he's fine, it'll grow back. But I think hopefully he's learned his lesson about lying down in my paint palette, because it looked like he just chose not to lay in this, which is really great. So anyways, I'm totally done glazing this. I'm going to give it an hour to set up, and then after it's set, I'm going to caulk these baseboards. You can check that out in another video about why I'm so crazy about caulking baseboards, and I think it's one of the most important things you can do to a home to really boost the cosmetic appearance of your home. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll put up a final picture of the final product. I'm super excited about how this turned out. I've got 2 days in it. I probably could have knocked it out in like 3 to 4 hours, including the drying time. Yeah. I think this would be an easy project that you could easily complete, definitely in a weekend, probably in an afternoon. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you just like seeing my face, like and subscribe. And check us out on the blog, on Instagram, we're Tasha Industries, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.